The smallest phone in the Samsung Galaxy S25 lineup this year is actually one of the weirdest ones. It has loads to like, some things to loathe, and it's doing really very little new on the surface. But does that make it a bad buy? Well, maybe, but let's get a little bit into it and decide, or help you decide, if the S25 is worth its money. How about you hit that subscribe button though before I really get into the meat of this review? Does that sound like a deal for you? Well, you're doing me a solid, and hopefully you get some solid content like this too, so cheers. So on paper, the only major upgrade to the Galaxy S25 over the base S24, and even to some extent the S23, is the chipset. Some other things have changed, but maybe not as much as they probably should have, or at least from the outside looking in, they should have. For all intents and purposes, this is the same phone that we've seen for the past 3 years, and my hypercritical side says this isn't good enough, but at its core, the S25 actually isn't that bad. It's just an indictment, I think, where Samsung finds itself almost 15 years into the smartphone industry. Small changes are almost the exception nowadays. From top to bottom, the entire Galaxy S25 lineup feels a little bit like a social experiment in some ways. Give people the smallest changes and see how fans, buyers, and us, the media, react. Are we fools for liking a 3-year-old design, or do we accept that Samsung is doubling down on a distinct design language and see the core experience improve? Well, you gotta actually decide for yourself which camp you fall into. I'm of the opinion that constantly refining makes more sense, as R&D efforts can be focused elsewhere, and hopefully into the ailing Fold series, as the S series is really nice and mature by now. And as one of my colleagues over on site states in his review of the Galaxy S25 Plus, Andrew states that the Samsung has done probably, or at least it feels like they're done improving in some ways, and that isn't necessarily a bad thing. This is just a boxy little phone with sharp corners, minimal bezels, a beautiful screen, and some vibrant colours to choose from. The formula basically remains untouched over the past few years, save some new lens hubcaps and that improved Snapdragon chip that I alluded to right at the start. The hand-friendly size is really going to be one of those attractive options, and at least having flip-flopped between massive foldable phones in recent months, it's something I've really come to know and love. It's devilishly thin and at the same time feels expertly crafted. Even with a case on, you'll have a super small package that doesn't compromise at least too much. And I think it's refreshing to have a phone that has all the power of its bigger siblings without compromising on its own size. It's something realistically to be lauded, as it gives an option of something for less pocket bulging prowess that some of these other phones seem to have. The biggest and boldest change though is in the Android 15 update that comes pre-installed here. It still isn't available for previous generation Galaxy devices, although it is still technically in its preview phase, and this is the only stable build currently available. I have to say, it's a triumph in many ways, and I said so as such in my hands-on with the beta a long time ago. It eliminates some of the irksome issues with consistency and animations, and I think it does it with aplomb. And while the design itself is staid from a hardware perspective, the software has gained lots of attention and much greater iteration. And to that end, the One UI 7 build on this device has quickly becoming one of my favourite ways to enjoy Android. Something I have to say I never thought I would say, having used Pixel phones for such a long time at this point in time. Samsung fans will love these little touches like the improved app opening and closing animations, although you really need to pay attention to see these. There's the enhanced quick setting section, which for some people will dislike, but the now bar is one of those options that is technically powered by AI, and I really do like it. This, though, just bear with me for a second. This is a thought experiment. What would Samsung's take on Apple's live activities look like? Well, I think if it is the now bar, it's great, despite feeling a little bit cheeky, at least cheeky from a stealing perspective. It's a lock screen widget, and sometimes you have home screen widgets as well that will put pertinent information and controls in a really nice reachable place. I mostly love it for the audio controls, as it's just easier to use when you're on the go, and that's about the extent of my own usage at this point. But options like live sports scores are definitely something lifted straight out of iOS, and I'm hoping to see lots of other applications start to support this later down the line. If they will, well, it remains to be seen at this point. And this is just scratching the surface. That's basically two things that they've added here in One UI 7. That scratches the surface of this, and I have to say the aesthetic and underhood changes are a little bit more meaningful when you start getting into it, but everywhere little flourishes are enhanced with deeper AI integration with Galaxy AI systems. To be honest, I think most people are unlikely to use most of these, and I'm actually in that camp as well. Whether we like it or not, though, AI is getting shoehorned into every aspect of nearly every product we're ever going to buy over the next few years. There's probably a zero chance that I would use voice controls to send messages or get my phone to take care of. I would consider them sensitive tasks, no matter what Samsung might think. I do though like the search functions, which has been powered out here by Galaxy AI. It's just far better at picking out wayward searches or queries, especially in that settings section, which is most of the time where I'm using this. And all of this realistically is just underpinned by that sheer power of the Snapdragon 8 Elite chipset. Slick is just an easy adjective to describe this experience. You're really getting true top of the line performance no matter which phone you choose, and I think ditching the Exynos chip is definitely a big boon for global buyers like myself, as you're not looking at least in envy at North American owners of the Galaxy S25 this time around, as last year we had the Exynos chip, which was definitely down the totem pole in terms of performance and battery, what would it be called? Battery efficiency. For now, this is the most powerful small phone on the market that you can go out and buy, and that is likely a major reason some of you are interested in what it offers, period. One major concern though is just how well the Galaxy S25, with its relatively small 4000 mAh battery, can compete with other phones at a similar price point, especially when you consider that the Pixel 9 has a 4700 mAh battery and a vastly inferior, at least in terms of efficiency level, chipset on that hardware. There are some efficiency gains with this Snapdragon chip though in the S25, but I don't think it quite alleviates some of these small battery woes. Most people will probably have a great experience with this phone, and especially as it can handle everything they'll ordinarily do with it, veer into things like huge gaming sessions and naturally those GPS navigation on a regular basis, and you will have difficulties, but this is par for the course with any phone today, and two of those problem areas that nobody has really been able to fix, at least in 2025 and beyond. A midday charge is one of the things you might be required to do to get through those busiest days, and that might become a common occurrence as your phone starts to age, which is again another reason to potentially look elsewhere if you do care about battery life. I have been able to kill this phone in a day, but most of the time it lasts at least until bedtime, with a little bit of stress as you reach the mid-teens of that battery percentage before you head off to bed. I wouldn't have a problem if Samsung increased the phone thickness though, if that meant a bigger battery, but they've gone for small, thin, waif-like aesthetic, and yeah, it just means a smaller battery, and therefore you're going to have to contend with that if you do want this phone. So what can we say that already hasn't been said about a camera that has basically been unchanged over the past couple of years? Well, in reality, not that much. The biggest compliment I can pay the Galaxy S25 is that it has a good spread of lenses that cover you in lots of situations, unlike some others out there, and that 3x optical I think is something you might not find in other base model Android phones, and one of the reasons why I treat an optical zoom lens as an essential on any phone today. So I have to say this is one of the better examples of a system catering to people that want a good camera, even in the lower end of a lineup, though the price would lead you to think otherwise. To stymie that a little bit though, we probably need some upgrades here to entice people looking to upgrade, especially from those older devices. I will say images look great, processing has changed slightly this year once again, but overall it's a good time with the Galaxy S25 camera in practically every situation, and that includes low light as well. So to summarise this entire review, I have to say the hypercritical person out there has every right to be disappointed that Samsung has basically wheeled out yet another tiny incremental iteration over their entry-level Galaxy S phone for 2025. The Korean tech giant has practically done the bare minimum and naturally wheeled this phone out again with just a new chip, expecting people to be happy with it, and that is a problem. To put it lightly, this is not good enough. Frustrations aside though, and I have a lot of frustrations with this, Samsung definitely deserves some credit for banishing that poorly performing and more or less universally hated Exynos chip from the S25 and S25 Plus in all global regions this time around. In the US, that wasn't a problem before, so you're going to have more gripes. For everyone else, I do think this might be a big enough change to at least earn some plaudits. The efficiency and performance uptick is excellent, which is going to help because a $799 phone with a 4000 mAh battery, well, it basically ain't it. And to simplify this review into just a few words, if you like the S22, the S23 or S24, you probably like this one. Is it enough though? I'd say yes from a core system perspective, but from a value proposition, no. If you want a smaller phone that has a lot of nice functions, this is a great package though, and we need to see Samsung spend more time working on the base model as it progresses year over year. It's likely the phone that most people will consider, as there are fewer and fewer people willing to tie themselves into that exorbitant sell plan that you've seen online somewhere, or even pay over $1,000 upfront to get the best in the lineup. I'm talking about the Galaxy S25 Ultra there. The fundamentals here are good, but the recipe needs some extra seasoning next year. As it stands, it's a good phone, it's a little bit overpriced, wait for a price drop, and you'll get a much better buy. Do you agree with me, or do you disagree with me? Let me know in the comment sections below, but definitely keep it civil. I think I've been fairly fair with the S25 this year, and naturally, we're all friends here, and that, my friend, is enough for me. So cheers, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in a bit.